partially responsible for its development that's important for the Port of Baltimore and for so many water projects in our state. So it was an extremely important bill, strongly supported it, but I cannot support the process that was used. We should have passed this bill a lot earlier, that is the COVID relief. We should have taken up a lot of these issues individually on the floor of the Senate with individual debate, discussion, and opportunities for an amendment. I think if we would have done that, we would even have a stronger product. So I don't condone the process, but the bill itself is very important. We have a limited amount of time today, so I'm going to really limit my discussions to the direct provisions that affect small business. There's obviously a lot of things in the COVID package and in the appropriations process that help small businesses, but I'm going to limit my discussion to the provisions that we crafted in the COVID relief package that directly affects small business. As Renee has pointed out, I have staff from the Small Business Committee on this call who can help us with a lot of the technical information. I want to just acknowledge the staff that I have the honor of being to lead on behalf of the Democrats on the Small Business Committee, headed by Sean Moore. They've been incredible in the negotiations and drafting of this small business package. And Ron Soroff is on the call. He's our contact to the questions that you may have and follow up. Please be patient. There's a lot of questions that are being asked. And obviously, we are still trying to sort out how the administration is going to administer this program. I want to just acknowledge from the beginning that it's my hope that these provisions that help small business will be implemented very, very quickly. I would hope in regards to the next round of PPP, it could be in a matter of days. Obviously, we've done things before in Congress with the intent that the administration would move quicker than they have. So this is really in the hands of the administration. And let me point out that the president has not signed the bill yet. So the bill first has to be signed. And then, of course, we will get a time frame from the administration on how they will accept applications for assistance. There will be a call later today that I will participate in with the Secretary of Treasury, Secretary Mnuchin. I assume that the SBA Administrator, Carranza, will be on the call also, that will deal with how this bill will be implemented. And I will certainly relay that information to the different stakeholders in Maryland so you can take advantage of that information. But recognize that on January 3rd, there'll be a new Congress. On January 20th, there'll be a new administration. So obviously, there is transition issues in the administration, these programs that have to be resolved. One last point before I get into the specifics. I would urge you all to act quickly. We have appropriated a lot of money, $325 billion for these programs. That's a lot of money. But as we saw in the CARES Act, some of those funds were used rather quickly and people were left out. So I just urge you all to do your homework as quickly as possible, determine whether you're eligible for assistance, whether you want to apply for it, and get those applications ready to go as soon as the windows open for the federal programs. In crafting this next round, we learned certain lessons from the provisions that were included in the CARES Act last March. We recognize that the CARES Act, when we created the PPP program, it was to get money out quickly to as many small businesses as possible in order to keep them alive. We now have limited resources. We don't have anywhere near as much resources as we had available to us last March. So this bill is much more targeted. It's targeted to the underserved community. It's targeted to the smaller small businesses. It's targeted to those small businesses that desperately need help. Another lesson learned is that the only way we can get this done is through bipartisan cooperation. And this bill was crafted through Senator Rubio, myself, and our counterparts in the House. It was truly bipartisan. We had certain priorities. They had certain priorities. And we worked together in order to bring this bill to completion. We wanted to build on what was successful in the first round, and I think we have done that. So the largest single program in here is the PPP program, and that's true in the bill that was just passed. The PPP program is extended through March 31st of next year. There's those who have not taken advantage of the original PPP and those that are first-time eligible can apply for the original PPP loan. And then there's a second round of PPP relief. So let me talk first about those eligibility rules that have been changed that will allow entities that were not eligible for the original PPP program now to apply for it. We've included now C6s, nonprofit C6s. That includes our chamber-type organizations. We included housing co-ops, and we included newspapers and broadcasters. And we've gone through this. There's separate rules that apply to newspapers and broadcasters. We can go over the specifics with you as to how they can qualify for the PPP loan. But the bottom line is the list that we've looked at will include, we think, just about every one of our major broadcasters and newspapers in Maryland, from the Baltimore Business Journal to the Cumberland Times to our local broadcasting stations. There are certain requirements that have to be met, and those entities will certainly be looking at the fine print as to how they can apply for help. In regards to we've also, in regards to the second round of PPP, there now will be a second round for those who've already received PPP or those who apply for PPP and then use those funds and want to apply for the second round. But we have targeted the second round to those small businesses that have 300 employees or less. So it's not the traditional definition used by the Small Business Administration. There is a requirement that you must have sustained a 25% reduction in your gross receipts. That is the term used in your accounting on your Form 990, and we can go over that with those who have concerns about gross receipts, but that's the requirement. You must have at least a 25% reduction in your gross receipts. You must be 300 or less. We've also used the exact same formula we used in the PPP program as far as the amount of funds that you can borrow. We have used the same changes we made in the original PPP program in regards to the covered period. You can use any period from 8 to 24 weeks in order to get the maximum amount of forgiveness. You can use expenses that were changed first under the PPP program and now include additional expenses that were not included in the original PPP loan, such as your expenses in complying with the COVID-19 protections, any damages you may have sustained in regards to the demonstrations, and there's some additional supplier costs that you can now include under the PPP program. So you should look at that definition. It's an easier use of funds, but the 60-40 ratio over our 24-week period still provides that you have to have at least 60% of the funds in payroll. We made a special exception for those that come under NICS code for accommodations and food services. Rather than just getting the 2.5 times your pre-COVID monthly payroll as the maximum you can borrow, which is forgivable, we make it 3.5 for the restaurants and the accommodation facilities. So they get an extra help. As you may recall, there was a separate bill in to help the restaurants. We put it under the PPP program to provide some additional help for that group. We have targeted the funds for the underserved community. This was an important priority and lesson we learned from the first round of PPP. There will be $15 billion of this money that's appropriated for the PPP will be carved out for mission lenders. That's your CDFIs, your minority depository institutions, your micro lenders. That group will be guaranteed at least $15 billion of the funds that are available for loans made by these entities. We reserve $15 billion for smaller depository institutions. These are our smaller financial institutions that generally reach the underserved communities. We have $35 billion set aside for first-time borrowers. That's particularly important because we've heard that there's a lot of small businesses that didn't get into the first round in time because they just didn't have the avenues through financial institutions in order to borrow the money. So we reserved $35 billion for first-time PPP, and of that, $15 billion must be used by entities 10 employees or less, or loans under $250,000 in low-income communities. So we really are trying to target those who might have been left behind by the CARES Act. We also have targeted $25 billion in the second round of PPP for small businesses that are 10 employees or less, or borrow less than $250,000 in low-income communities. Once again, we're trying to target it to those communities that have been left out traditionally and those that have had a hard time under the original PPP program. We have required the SBA to issue guidance and prioritize underserved communities. We did that once before. The CARES Act didn't work so well, but I can tell you we're going to be watching this very carefully. And I'm very pleased that in addition to the $325 billion that we provided for the small business programs, there's an additional $12 billion going to Treasury to help CDFIs and minority depository institutions so that they have the capital in order to reach these underserved communities. And of that $12 billion, $2 billion can be used or must be used for direct loans by these institutions to distressed small businesses. At the request of just about everybody, we've simplified the forgiveness form. This is immediate for those loans under $150,000. I know that'll be a big relief to a lot of those individuals who are trying to figure out how to get the forgiveness of their original PPP loan. Many of you have asked about the tax deductibility issue. We were able to pass legislation that repeals Secretary Mnuchin's ruling that the PPP expenses that were reimbursed under PPP were not deductible. We made it deductible, so you will be able to get the full deduction for those expenses. And we did clarify and change the fact that if you have an EIDL advance grant that was given to you, there's no need to deduct that from your PPP forgiveness. So you can have both PPP and an EIDL advance grant. In addition to the changes in the Paycheck Protection Program, we also made a significant change in the Economic Disaster Injury Loan Program, the EIDL program. We put $20 billion of additional funds into that program targeted to low-income communities. In small businesses located in low-income communities will be able to get up to a $10,000 grant, and those that got the original advance under the CARES Act but was under $10,000 can get those grants upgraded to $10,000. And we still have authority under the EIDL loan program to take out EIDL loans, although we recognize that may be contingent upon the administration continuing to recognize the COVID-19 as a disaster qualifying for EIDL loans. We have a new program operated under the Small Business Administration for shuttered venue operators. These are our live venues, our theater companies, our museums, motion pictures, talent representatives. There's lots of nuances as to who qualifies and who does not qualify. For example, these institutions must have cannot have two of three disqualifiers. The three disqualifiers are over 500 workers operating in more than 10 or more states or operating in 2 or more countries. If you have 2 of those 3, you don't qualify. I'm getting a little bit into the weeds, so I'm going to keep moving along. But just if you are a museum, or if you're a motion picture company, or if you're a theater, if you're a live venue, you need to take a look at the specifics. But the way that we have looked at this, we are very optimistic that, just give you some examples, we have literally hundreds of institutions in Maryland we think will qualify. Under museums, we think from the Reginald Lewis Museum to the B&O to the National Aquarium, to the BMA to Walters Hall, and many, many, many others will qualify. Under theaters, we believe that Meriwether, Olney Theater, and many, many others will qualify. Under the theaters, we think that the Baltimore Center Stage, Everman's Theater, and many, many others will qualify. So there are a lot of institutions that qualify under this. You have to demonstrate a 25% reduction in gross earned income. Now, I'm going to pause there for a second because the standard used for the shuttered venue operators is different than the standard used for the second round of PPP. As I pointed out, on the second round of PPP, it's gross receipts that have to be down by 25%. Under the shuttered venue, it's 25% reduction in gross earned income. You have a full year to use the funds through December 31st, 21. And most business expenses are eligible for to be used for. There are some exceptions. Again, we can check the statute to make sure you fully understand. The amount of the grant under this program is capped at 45% of the gross earned income, or $10 million. That's a pretty generous amount. There's a provision for a second round if funds remain after 60 days of an additional 50% if that institution has a gross earned income reduction in excess of 70%. We give priorities for the most needed venues, those that have had a gross earned income reduction of 90% or more have a 14-day head start. And then for the next 14 days, those that have a 70% reduction in gross earned income are next in line. But we do reserve at least 20% of the funds for those institutions that do not qualify with the 70%. There's a $2 billion set aside for venues that have 50 workers or less, and you cannot both get the second round of PPP and a shuttered venue grant. Then they're on the debt relief program that was part of the CARES Act for debt relief for 7A 504 microloans. We extended that through September 30th of next year, giving an additional 3 months capped at $9,000 a month under that program, and then an additional 5 months for a total of 8 months for those small businesses located in underserved, the hardest hit industries, such as restaurants. We also provided $2 billion of help for the small business core programs so that we improve the basic programs themselves, the 7A programs, guarantees up to 90% fee waivers. We got $25 million from minority business development agencies. We helped some of our entrepreneurship programs, such as the Women's Business Center, eliminating the match requirements and extending the 8A certification for 1 additional year. And then lastly, let me point out that the earned retention tax credit that was not really in our bucket was significantly improved in the tax section. We increased the credit from 50% to 70%. We increased it from $10,000 a year to $10,000 a quarter, and increased the size of the companies from 100 to 500 employees that can qualify for the employee retention tax credit. So that's a lot of information, and I just scratched the surface. There are a lot of nuances in this legislation, and obviously the way it's going to be enforced will probably bring out more questions. But I really wanted to make sure that the Maryland stakeholders get this information out as quickly as possible and be prepared to make applications for either the next round of PPP, the original round of PPP, the new shutter venue program, or the idle grant program, that you're ready to move on these programs as soon as the Small Business Administration is ready to accept applications. And with that, Renee, I'm going to turn it over to you for questions that might be asked.
Thank you, Senator. We have a couple of questions, a lot of questions actually, but to remind everyone how to raise your hand, if you're calling in, press *3 and *2 again to lower. If you are joining from a laptop or a device, open your participants panel. In the lower right-hand corner will be a hand symbol. Our first question will come from Christine Ross. She is the Maryland Chamber of Commerce president. Christine, you are now unmuted.
Good morning. Thank you all so much. Senator Cardin, we just appreciate you making time to go through this very complex bill, and in particular, wanted to thank you for getting 501c6 organizations included in this round. As you know, Chambers of Commerce have been boots on the ground supporting the small businesses across the entire state, and this means so much to their survival, and it'll allow us to create an even stronger continuum going forward. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you. I also wanted you to know that we are your partners as this legislation evolves and you need to get more information out. We are here to be your partner and will help to accommodate any of future webinars that you need. So thank you.
Christine, thank you for those comments. Let me be clear about this. From the beginning, one of my top priorities was to include nonprofits, the same as for-profit small businesses, which would include all the Cs. That's been a priority that I had. We had from the original negotiations on the CARES Act concerns raised by Treasury as to including nonprofits. And it was extremely difficult to get them to move at all. And I was disappointed when the CARES Act passed, and I expressed it at that time, that we restricted the eligibility to C3s, and we didn't go beyond C3s. I was pushing very hard in this round of negotiations to include all Cs, which I think we should have. I don't think we should have eliminated any of the nonprofits from being able, if they're eligible, they meet the criteria, from being able to apply for these loans. So I was pleased that we were able to get the C6s included, and thank you for your comments. And I can assure you that we strongly supported including the C6s and including as many of the nonprofits as we possibly can. I might also say that they wanted to impose different size limits on nonprofits. We resisted that, and we won that argument.
Next question will come from David Harrington from the Prince George's County Council. David, you are now unmuted.
Great. Thank you, Renee. And Senator, thank you for this fantastic briefing, and really appreciate it, and getting the information out. And like Christine Ross, please use our chamber as a means of getting information out in Prince George's County, and we appreciate the partnership. The question that I have, you may not be able to answer it right now, is that with PPP, these comes through community banks and other banks. When will, after, of course, when the president signs the legislation, do you have a sense of timetable when the banks might be able to be authorized to accept applications for PPP?
David, well, first of all, thank you for all your help. I appreciate all you've done in Prince George's County. The same financial institutions that were eligible for the PPP loans are eligible for the P4 loans and the increased eligibility under the original PPP. So it's the same structure that we use in the PPP. We expect that could be implemented very, very quickly. So we stood up the PPP program in a matter of days, if you remember correctly, when it passed in March. We hope that the administration will have the same degree of urgency and will set up this program very rapidly. We don't think it's too difficult to adjust the application forms, particularly for the small businesses, to get these loans out quickly. So we do hope it'll be done quickly, but I may know more later today in my conversations with the administration, but we expect that being the holidays and everything else, is going to take a few days, if not a little bit longer, before we have a full understanding. We do want to make sure that the underserved community is out there as quickly as possible, and that's why we really have beefed up our efforts with mission lenders.
Next question will come from Linda Friday from the Queen Anne's County Chamber of Commerce. Linda, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator, for all that you've done this year. I've been on many of your calls, and the information that you've shared has just been unbelievable. So thank you first for that. Second, I'm going to comment on Christine. Thank you for including the C6s. As you know, we have been the messenger to the business community, and just want to thank you for including us this time in the package. We greatly appreciate that, more than probably anyone knows. My question to you is, do you anticipate any new stimulus packages once our new president takes office?
Linda, thanks for that question. If it's up to me, the answer is yes. If it's up to President-elect Biden, the answer would be yes. But we first have to get this bill signed by the president and implemented. Yes, I do expect there'll be another round of COVID relief. I don't believe we will get to that before February at the earliest, because the new administration doesn't take the oath of office until January the 20th. It has to go through a congressional process with a new Congress. And remember, there will either be a very small margin with the Republicans in the leadership of the Senate, or a very, very, very small margin with the Democrats in leading the Senate. So it's going to require bipartisan support in order to get the next package done. And quite frankly, I think we do a better package when it's bipartisan. So it may take a little bit of time, but I do think there'll be another round of COVID relief. I do know state and local governments need additional assistance. We did not give them everything they need in this package, that's for sure. And we do think small businesses may still need additional help. And we also need to monitor to make sure there's enough resources in these programs, and that may require additional federal action.
Next question comes from Angela Tersequel. She is a Howard County small business owner. Angela, you are now unmuted.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on the call this morning. Senator Cardin, there's a lot of talk about the expansion of the PPP loan and the program itself, but my question is, what type of drastic forgiveness or broad stroke forgiveness will take place? I know there's a lot of conversations regarding Bill 4321 about forgiving the loan completely if you borrowed less than $150,000. $1 is a lot of money to a small business owner, $1. And many, I think the statistics show that 85% of borrowers took less than $150,000, but we only took 26% of the PPP pot. And in our case in particular, the PPP funding afforded us to be able to actually revamp our business model. But if we are caught in a position where some of that money isn't forgiven, we could find ourselves after 45 years in business closing our doors.
I think help's on the way. The legislation requires the SBA to accept a one-page forgiveness form that includes information, can include information on the demographics of your company, and a statement by you that you have complied with the requirements. And that's basically all that is required. You have to give the exact numbers so that you can show that you spent the money, and you will be able to get forgiveness. We have made that very clear in this form. As you know, there was lots of legislative action to counter what the SBA administrator was doing on the forgiveness forms and Treasury was doing on the forgiveness forms. It was counter to what Congress intended. And we've now passed specific legislation that for loans under $150,000, it should be an extremely simple process for you to get that form in. You will have to hold on to your records to show that, in fact, you spent the money as required. As you know, 60% had to be spent on payroll type of expenses over a 24-week period. You're going to have to keep those records, but it's your certification that will trigger the forgiveness.
Next question will come from a call-in user 301562. You are now unmuted.
Good morning, everyone. Senator Cardin, thank you again for this brief introduction of the new package. It's always helpful to be in the know. We appreciate that. My question was a simple one. You mentioned the new requirement of 25% of the revenue, or there must be a reduction of 25% of the revenue. I was wondering, over a period of what time? Are we talking about, for example, 2019 versus 2020? And if not, what period are we addressing here?
Thank you for that question, and let me clarify that. First of all, it's 25% reduction in gross receipts. for the purposes of a PPP second round. And it's for any quarter as compared to the 2019 quarter in 2020. So you can use your first quarter, second quarter, or third quarter. And if you can demonstrate a 25% revenue loss during any one of those 3 quarters, you qualify for that second round of PPP loan. If you want to use the fourth quarter, you cannot apply until next year, and then you can use the fourth quarter compared to the fourth quarter in 2019.
Next question will come from Chris Cassolinas. He's from the St. Mary's County Economic Development Council. Chris, you are now unmuted.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Cardin. One of the things we've heard from small business owners is that with the first stimulus package, the unemployment benefits went up so high, the additional benefits, that there was a kind of a disincentive for workers to come back to work, and they were having trouble getting some of their employees to actually come back to work versus staying home. Does the new package kind of address this a little bit?
Thank you. I was not involved in the drafting of the UI provisions, but my understanding is that it continues the same standards that was used in the CARES Act through March of next year, with 11 weeks of additional benefits of $300 a week for an 11-week period. So it's not, the CARES Act was $600 a week. This is $300 a week of extra benefits going to those who are still eligible for unemployment under the CARES Act or under state program.
Next question will come from a call-in user, number 443623. You are now unmuted. Alrighty, we're going to move on. Number 561501. You are now unmuted.
This is Dr. Berger. I want to thank you for all of your help and your many years of service. I have some concern about the EIDL loans that were originally made, where they were capped at $150,000, where they were, the original limit was a $2 million limit. For those organizations such as hotels and restaurants, which we own, $150,000 just doesn't help. The $2 million level made a lot of sense. Will you remove the $150,000 cap on the EIDL loans?
Dr. Berger, I agree completely with you on this point. As we stated very clearly in the law, you can get an EIDL loan and a PPP loan. You can do both. You just can't use the funds for the same purpose, but you can get both and get full forgiveness of the PPP and get the full amount of the EIDL loan. The law is very clear of the $2 million cap on the EIDL loans. It was through administrative action that they limited it to $150,000. It was without the consultation with Congress and certainly without the approval of Congress that they limited it to $150,000. In my legislation that I authored on behalf of the Democrats on our committee, we took away that authority and said that loans had to be up to $2 million. That was not included in the legislation that was enacted. So the administrative action that caps it at $150,000 is not affected by this legislation. However, there'll be a new administration coming in on January the 20th. And I can tell you that in interviewing the person who will become the administrator of the SBA, that's one of the first questions I'm going to ask that administrator about carrying out the intent of Congress and removing that $150,000 cap.
All right, next question will come from another call-in user. Just a reminder to introduce yourselves with your name and affiliation. Caller number 301424. You are now unmuted.
Good morning, Senator Cardin. Thank you so very much for all you are doing for a small business. And My question was, these loans that are forgiven, then we do not report them as a income for our tax purposes. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes, you are correct under this bill. The Treasury Department did issue guidelines that we disagreed with that could have affected the taxability of loan forgiveness or the deductibility of the expenses. We have clarified that to make it clear that the loan forgiveness is not a taxable event and that the expenses are deductible as ordinary business expenses.
All right, next question will come from another call-in user, 410227. You are now unmuted.
Hi, Senator Cardin. Thank you again for taking questions and explaining some of the minutia of the new COVID package. My name is Tekla Tesno. I'm the owner of the Auto Bar, a local live music venue that has been operating in Baltimore City for over 20 years. And I really want to thank you again for including the Save Our Stages Act through the NEVA lobbyist group. I know they helped try to get some bipartisan support on this particular issue, and it's very encouraging to see that this has been specified in the new package. I did have sort of a interrelated question. I know previously on the state level, there had been the Maryland Strong Economic Recovery Initiative had been passed and implemented, and I know a few of my colleagues had applied, but we still haven't received any information about that yet. So all the applications seem to be in a holding pattern, and I was wondering if there was any insight as to if the new package had anything to do with maybe the holdup of this particular recovery initiative.
I really don't know the answer to that question specifically. I do know that CARES funding to the states could be used for this type of relief. And many states have developed their own programs to help small businesses and other businesses. And we encourage at the national level, we didn't discourage, we provide the resources. They could use the federal CARES funds to do that. I don't know if that was the source for Maryland's anticipated program or not. We also have made it clear you can get both state, local, and federal help. You're not you don't have to do one versus the other. However, you can't use the proceeds to pay the same expenses. You have to be able to demonstrate that you use the federal funds to pay for the expenses that are required in order for this loan grant to be given. So other than that, you can do both, but I do not know the current status of a state program. I just don't know this. And if I may just pause for one moment, perhaps after the next question, Ron, if you have any clarifications or additions you want to add to any of the questions that have already been stated, or if I have said something that you feel needs clarification, please jump in because I want to make sure we're giving out as much accurate information as possible. So why don't we take one more question and then see if Ron has any comments he wants to make, and then we'll go back to questions.
Great. One more question from call-in user 443463. You are now unmuted.
Good morning, Senator Cardin. It's Jeff Hargrave, President's Roundtable. Sir, I want to thank you for updating us on this important legislation you guys have finally passed. My question was answered about the 25% reduction on any given quarter. So I don't really have a question now, but again, I want to thank you, sir, for taking the time to speak to us today on behalf of the Roundtable. We appreciate you, sir.
Let me just say, Jeff, thanks for those comments. We pushed very hard to get MDI's special attention in this legislation, minority depository institutions. And it was resisted by Treasury, but we got it in there in a couple different ways. It's in the set aside from the point of view of the mission lenders. MDIs are included in that. And we also included it in the separate program under Treasury to increase the capacity of mission lenders, including MDIs and grants by MDIs. So we worked very hard on that because we recognize that there is the underserved community, and you all do an incredible job. Certainly, Harbor Bank's done a great job in that regard, and we wanted to make sure that was covered under this legislation. Renee, if Ron has anything he wants to add, if he doesn't, we can just keep going on. I just want to make sure he has a chance if there's anything that needs clarification.
Hi, Senator. It's Ron. I don't need to clarify anything that you said. I just wanted to reiterate a point that you made too. There's going to be there's going to be a lot of questions about sort of how do we get this funding, and so I just kind of wanted to reiterate once again that PPP is run through the banks and the lenders, and I know the local chambers as well as the small business development centers and the other SBA resources around Maryland have been, very helpful in sort of answering more of the technical questions and helping get applications filled out. And so I just wanted to reiterate there that there are resources that will be available to specifically help with the applications and more information about that as these programs, get in some instances reset up and in others, set up for the first time to sort of help sort through some of the, more technical nuances of how the funds will actually be applied for and distributed. And that's all I wanted to just add on this call.
Thank you, Ron. And to follow that up, the SBA will make direct loans in regards to the EIDL program and in regards to the venue program. And we've had some challenges in getting them to move quickly on these loans and grants. So, but that's done directly by the SBA compared to the PPP, which is done through financial institutions.
Next question will come from Tim Adams. Tim, you are now unmuted.
Hey, good morning, and thank you so very much for this, Senator. My quick question is, will the changes that you talked about getting clarification with the IRS and others, will that be retroactive to the previous PPP program or just moving forward with the new package?
Mr. Mayor, I hope you're doing well. It's always good to hear from you. The answer is it applies to the CARES Act also. So it applies to your the current 2020 tax returns and the monies that you received this year under the CARES Act. So yes, it is retroactive to the beginning of the PPP program.
Next question will come from Tissa Clark from the J.D. Clark Construction in Prince George's County. You are now unmuted.
Good morning, Senator Cardin. Thank you so much for all that you do for small business. My question is around outreach and particularly technical assistance for those micro businesses in those underserved communities. Is there any type of funding that's going to be in this package to support either nonprofit or for-profit organizations to get down in the grassroots supporting these underserved communities? What I've heard from a lot of those small businesses is that either they were not aware of the programs, and when they were made aware, they needed technical support in regards to getting their financial documents in order as such to be in a position to apply.
That's a very important question, so I thank you for asking that. First, we did provide substantial billions of dollars of support to the SBAs around our nation, and we anticipated that those funds would be used in order to help small businesses get through the process. So we did provide additional resources at the SBA regional level and in order to try to answer these questions and to help in regards to giving advice. We then provided in this bill additional support for the entrepreneurship programs. For example, the Women Business Centers, we have 2 new centers in Maryland. The matching requirements have been waived so that the Women's Business Center can have greater capacity to reach out and do their work. We know that the minority business development agencies, we provided some additional help for the MDTAs. We extended the 8A certification for an additional year. So we have provided resources in that regard to beef up the entrepreneur services partners that we have in order to meet these needs. And I've met with many of our groups in Maryland, the SBDCs, and they've done an incredible job in helping. But I do urge the local chambers, there's so many different groups out there that can really help us in this effort, because it is complicated, it is difficult, and it's particularly difficult for those that are in underserved minority communities, the small businesses, the mom and pops. Those are the ones who really need our outreach. And I applaud the efforts being made by our local chambers, by our SBA regional offices. We have 2 in the state of Maryland, by our 3 women business centers that we have, our SBDCs located in College Park. We have the programs here in our state, and we've given them additional help, but they need all of us working together to get this information out, particularly to the underserved communities.
Next question will come from Joe Haskins from Harbor Bank in the Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Prince George's County area. Joe, you are now unmuted.
Great. Thank you very much. Senator Cardin, one, thanks for acknowledging our role, and I want to specifically thank you for that $12 billion that's focused on the minority community and these underserved communities, and specifically to talk about the MDIs. By the way, Harbor Bank of Maryland is the only Maryland chartered MDI, and so we've carried a disproportionate load in terms of getting these funds out. And I will tell you that the dollars that we're talking about that will be coming or be available to our institutions will be helpful, because with many of the smaller PPP loan programs, there's a disproportionate amount of additional time that's required to ensure that the applications are done correctly. And so these resources that will be made available to, in specific, our MDI will aid us in getting the process carried out in a way that we really do reach out and touch those who are most needy or desperate for access to capital. I will mention to you that John Lewis and I, and John is the president here along with me, ensuring that we get this work done. We wanted to make sure that when we look at some of the existing PPP loan holders, we can get them processed probably while we're simultaneously looking at a second round for them. And I wanted to make sure that there would be not a real impediment for us being able to almost simultaneously do 2 things, because the needs are so great that we know that the capital is necessary to keep many of these businesses operating. And while we're processing the exit of one, we want to ensure that we can be ready to move with the next one. So thank you very much, and I'll listen to your response.
Well, Joe, thank you for what you do for our community. I'm very proud of what Harbor Bank has been able to accomplish, particularly in reaching communities that otherwise would not have served. I strongly work to get that $12 billion part of this package. Even though it's under Treasury, it's not under small business. It was a priority that I had and I've had in my conversations with Secretary Mnuchin during the CARES debate and during the implementation of CARES to get money out to mission lenders, CDFIs, and MDIs, and microlenders. I do want to acknowledge the senator who was the moving factor behind this $12 billion program, and that was Senator Warner, our neighbor from Virginia. He was the architect of this particular provision as to how it was finally crafted. And he was able to get the money in a separate pot, which I strongly wanted. Otherwise, it would have come out of our $325 billion, and we didn't want it coming out of our $325 billion. So Senator Warner did just a great job on behalf of the mission lenders, the CDFIs and MDIs. So I just really wanted to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that we put some provisions in here to make it easier for you to do business with small businesses. There is no question that the traditional lenders in our state, they stepped up to the plate and they did everything they could to implement this program, the original CARES program. And I'm proud of the way that they were able to process Maryland small business loans under the PPP program. They did a great job. But the normal bias is to your established customers and to the larger loans because you make more money off of it, but it's easier to deal with. You already have that information in your office. You don't have to worry about a lot of the certifications under banking that you have to do. And it's always uncomfortable to go beyond your current portfolios. We recognize that. And we saw that happened during the initial round of the PPP. The MDIs and the CDFIs are there to fill some of that void. And that's part of their mission, is to reach a more difficult number of clients. But they shouldn't be penalized in that process. So that's why we have set-asides in this program, so that we have specific dollar amounts that you know are going to go to these mission lenders, $15 billion. And that's why, and take a look at the fee structure, because we put a statutory fee structure in place that will provide, we think, sufficient recovery of costs to make the smaller of the small loans. Because, as you know, the larger the loan, you're making a percentage of the loan, you make more money off of it. We wanted to make sure that there was fairness to the very small loans. As that one small business owner earlier suggested, every dollar is important to a really small business. We want to make sure they can get in the front of the line, not the back of the line. And of course, the last thing is we did wall off a certain amount of money that must go to businesses 10 or under. So we are mindful of what you have said in regards to reaching the more difficult small businesses, and we think the combination of these provisions will really help so that a mom and pop business that doesn't have an established banking relation, we can reach out. We have the capacity to service them, and they won't get squeezed out of the line because they don't have a favored connection.
Next question will come from Colin user 240481. And just a reminder to please introduce yourself and your affiliation. You are now unmuted.
Hello, yes. Again, I want to echo my appreciation, Senator, for taking the time out to talk to us and answer our questions. My name is Zainab Abbas. I'm the founder of SciTech to You, which is a STEM organization that caters to the underserved and underrepresented communities. And my question is about the EIDL. Last year or last round, I did apply for the EIDL and I did qualify, but I really had to return the money because I knew I couldn't afford to pay it back, and I didn't want to accrue the interest either. So I was wondering if there's anything in the provision that offers more money to a very small organization like myself, where I'm not obligated to pay it back and the interest that accrues on top of that.
Well, let me assure you, you are not alone. We've run into many small business owners who say, gee, we appreciate the fact that the EIDL loan program is there, but we can't take on more debt. It's pure and simple. We can't pay it back. We're not going to be able to pay it back. The EIDL loan, we need it, but we can't afford to put another debt on our business. So that's why we developed the EIDL Advance program. That was originally intended to give up to $10,000 to a business like yours as an advancement. We have refined that program in this bill. So if you are in a low-income community, you can get a $10,000 grant. Whether if you applied for one under the CARES Act, and if you got a grant, let's say of $2,000 because you had 2 employees, you can now increase that to $10,000. You get an extra $8,000 grant. These are grants. These are not loans. If you are from again a low-income community, and if you didn't apply for that grant, even if you applied for the loan, but if you did not apply for the grant, you can now apply for that grant and get a $10,000 grant if you're in a low-income community. Now, the same thing applies to the original PPP program and the second round of PPP. These are forgivable loans. If it's done right, you should be able to get 100% of the loan forgiven, so it should not have to be a loan that's repaid. I point that out because you, under this new change that we made, you can get the EIDL advance, the grant of $10,000, and you can get a PPP loan, and you don't have to offset the forgiveness of the PPP loan on the EIDL advance that you've gotten.
Next question will come in from another call-in user, 240876. You are now unmuted.
Senator Cardin, thank you so much. This is Audrey Schaefer, and I'm wearing two hats. One is with Meriwether Post Pavilion, and the other is with the National Independent Venue Association. And to say that you have fought for us so hard to save not only Meriwether, but venues across Maryland and across the country is not an understatement. It was called the Save Our Stages Act, and you have really made sure that that's going to happen. And I do want to take 1 second to not only thank you, but Kevin on your staff and Ron on your staff, who have been so generous with their time in allowing me to explain the intricacies and the differences of our industry versus all the others, and how we were hit so hard because we're shuttered, and we still are, and this addresses it, and we're so grateful. I wanted to say that because the stipulations within Save Our Stages Act were very perfectly crafted in order to help those in the most need, and but it's complicated, and it's our understanding that the SBA probably has not administered this type of a program before because it's got so many different caveats in it. And I just want to let you know that National Independent Venue Association, it wants to raise our hand to help with anything that they need in order to create the administration of this. So it goes to only the organizations that Congress intended, and that it happens expediently because we are desperate for the money now. We've been desperate for it for so very many months. And not for lack of your trying, but this is, we've waited like the rest of the country for about 8 months, 9 months for this next set of relief. So anything that we can do, we want to do. And then the other question I have is that with the president's comments last night about sounding like he wasn't going to sign it, I'm not going to get my hair on fire about it, but I'm just curious what the sense is. If he refuses to sign it and it just time needs to expire for it to turn into law, how much time is that? Or is it something that Congress is going to have to come back if he vetoes it?
Well, first of all, thank you. To answer your last question first, if the president were to veto this bill, yes, Congress will come back next week and take it up either as a veto override or because the government would shut down because part of the bill is the continuation the appropriations for the year. We've only have a temporary extension through through next Monday. So we would have to come back on the by the 28th at the latest in order to deal with it, and we'd probably have a veto override at that time. And we had the votes in both the House and Senate to override the president. My understanding, and I'm getting just looked on my phone on the most recent text coming from our leadership. It looks like the president's trying to negotiate larger direct payment checks, which it's possible that could be done through unanimous consent. So I don't know whether that's going to be the trade-off or not to increase the $600 per person check. And the way the president operates is not the way a president should operate, and that's the understatement of the century. So who knows how this president's going to operate, but we're going to make sure we get this done. We are committed to making sure this happens. In regards to Meriwether Post, first of all, thank you for your interaction with our office. We appreciate that very much, and thank you for your comments on Kevin and Ron. We're pretty specific as to how this program should be implemented. The language is pretty clear. Having said that, the SBA is challenged in dealing with direct loan grant programs and loan programs. We had originally asked them to do the EIDL advance in 3 days. It took them a lot longer than 3 days to do it. So we would think that they could stand up this program pretty quickly. By pretty quickly, I mean they're going to have to issue regulations, et cetera. There's interpretation issues. So it's going to be it's not going to be a matter of days. It's going to take a couple of weeks in order to get it, I would think, and that's being optimistic on the venue grant program. I would think the P4 program, the second round of PPP, should be done a lot sooner than that. So thank you for your offer. We'll make sure that we're in touch, and I have a call, as I said, later today with the administration to deal with this. The last point, as I said earlier, we're also dealing with a new Congress on January the 3rd and a new president on January the 20th, a new SBA administrator shortly thereafter, a new secretary of the treasurer. So there's going to be new players in town that will be implementing these bills. And we're going to hope to do this as seamlessly as possible. But knowing the way that President Trump is handling transition, it could be a rough road. But we recognize it's urgent to get you the help as soon as possible. I want to underscore why we did this. You were ordered to close. You had no choice. You could not conduct your business in a way consistent with the public health requirements. So government shuttered your business, and you recognized that you had to be shuttered because of the public health issues. So we want to make sure that the Meriwether Posts of our country are available or survive COVID-19. And that's why this program is so desperately important. We want to help those businesses that depend upon large gatherings that couldn't have large gatherings. And that's why this venue provision, originally called Save Our Stages, it's now expanded beyond stages, was so important for us to get done.
Our next question will come from Cassandra. Cassandra, you are now unmuted.
Great, thank you so much. And Senator Cardin, we always appreciate hearing from you and the work that you're doing on our behalf in the United States Congress. I do have a question for you, though. The guidance I'm looking at says that to qualify for PPP, you must have been in business prior to February 15th, 2020. Believe it or not, we've had a number of small businesses open during this pandemic, which means that they've been planning their project for many months, and some of them have sunk their entire life savings into these projects. Now they need help, and they feel like they've been left out. And I have heard from a number of them. Are there any resources for this subset of businesses?
Well, you're correct. The requirements is that you had to be in business before COVID-19. So that is a firm requirement for the PPP program. I do believe there are SBA programs that are available for small businesses that might help in this regard. So take a look at the traditional programs that are available under the SBA. Secondly, local governments, counties and states have programs that are aimed at filling the gap which is not covered by the federal programs. So it is possible that the county or state may have a program that can fit the type of business that you're referring to. So that would be my best advice to you, but it is correct for the PPP program. You had to be in existence prior to the COVID-19, prior to February.
Alrighty, I think we have time for two more questions. We'll go to call-in user 240654. You are now unmuted.
Hi, I didn't think. Okay, thank you. This is Stacy calling from East West Wellness Center. Thank you for the wonderful information. I was wondering, one, would there be any chance for the EIDL loan itself to be forgiven instead of just the $10,000 advance? And you mentioned that the $10,000 advance, the more economically disadvantaged businesses can apply for an additional funding. What about for businesses that are not economically disadvantaged owners, but who are also still suffering as much? And my second question is, first, that's the question.
Right. The EIDL Advance program is only for small businesses located in low-income communities. That's where it's been tailored to. So that's part of the eligibility. The loan forgiveness under EIDL was a concept that some of us brought forward during this debate. We fought for that, but we were unable to get the Republicans refused to even consider it. They did not want to set up a change in the EIDL loan program. And so it did not have bipartisan support to move forward with a forgiveness program under EIDL itself. It's one that I thought we should have used. The reason I say that is for the exact reason you're talking about. It's a lot easier for a small business that does not have priority or established relations with the lender to go to the SBA and get help and get the loan, and it's easier to get that loan forgiven than to apply for a PPP loan. So that's why I wanted to get a forgivable EIDL loan, but it did not have, it never got to serious negotiations because it was basically a non-starter for the Republican side of the aisle. You asked one other question I don't think I answered. What was the last point that was raised? You're still on the line. But Renee, let's go to the last question, and then Ron, again, if there's anything you want to fill in, we'll fill in there. And at the end, we'll give you, again, the contact information if you have additional questions that are unanswered.
Great. We'll go to our last question. Call in number 202390. You are now unmuted.
Good morning, all, and thank you, Senator Carter, for everything you do. My name is Austin Thomas. I'm with a small business, 8A, and veteran-owned business in Columbia, Maryland. My question has to do with regards to the EIDL loan again and the implementation of it. I've been approved for that since July and still have trouble getting that funding to my bank. Is there anything in this that holds SBA, have more accountability and oversight for SBA for the implementation of this program? I believe you guys are doing a wonderful job with the legislation, but however, the implementation and execution of it is falling way short. Does this bill address that?
Well, thanks for that question. It was not a planned question, but I thank you very much for it because I share your concern 100%. And we have put provisions in this bill that are somewhat unique for legislation on accountability. For example, we require the SBA to respond to the General Accounting Office request within a certain number of days. Why do we have to put that in there when the General Accounting Office is the executive auditor of the SBA? It's because the SBA didn't give them the information and didn't allow the auditor to do its work. We put language in here about the SBA minister testifying before Congress. Why do we have to put language in there? It should automatically testify before Congress. We're the oversight arm of the legislative branch of government, but we did. So we share your concern about the SBA carrying out the intent of our law. In the EIDL program, you're 100% right. They've been very slow in processing the EIDL grants. They imposed the $150,000 cap without any real work with us. They still have capacity to give out loans, and yet they're not giving out the loans. So the capacity is still there. They didn't need a replenishment of funds in order to do the EIDL loan program. That's why this bill does not provide additional funds for EIDL loans. They have that capacity. and they should be issuing these loans in a much more expedited way than they're doing now, considering we're in a national emergency under COVID-19, and businesses are desperate to get those funds into their business. So the last thing I would mention is please let us know your example. Let's see whether my staff can't try to help expedite that process. It should have been, you shouldn't need our office, but I can assure you we will follow up with any Maryland business that's having the challenges in getting their applications through the process. So we'll follow through with you on that process. And with that, let me just see once again whether Ron wants to clarify or add anything that I've said on any of these answers.
Hi, Senator. Thanks. No, I have nothing to clarify or add.
And Renee, would you give that contact information one more time so people know how they can get their questions answered if they haven't had it to now?
Absolutely. The email address is smallbusiness@cardin.senate.gov. That's smallbusiness@cardin.senate.gov. And let me thank all of you again for being on this call, but also to try to help us make this as smooth as possible. What I said in the beginning, there's a lot of questions I can't answer because we just don't know how this program is going to be administered, and we're still waiting the president signing the bill. But it's important that companies be ready to act in a timely way when the windows open for these loans or grants, because we think we appropriated enough money. We never know. Under the CARES Act, we did not appropriate enough money. We had to come back and put more money into the PPP program. So I want to make sure that Maryland businesses are ready to act as soon as the administration is ready to accept applications. So anything we can do to help you in that process, please let us know. And for those of you who are on the front lines helping small businesses get through all this, thank you for your service to the community. And we'll continue to try to keep all of you informed as this process continues to unfold. We had a lot of people on this call at one time. I understand we were close to 400. So there's a lot of people on the call, and we'll try to keep you informed as this process continues to be implemented. Thank you all again. Have a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And hope everybody stays safe, and we'll talk to you all soon.